I first started noticing the small things, the way she laughed a bit too much at his jokes, the way their eyes met when they thought I wasn't looking, and how he always seemed to appear without any warning. His name was Norman, my best friend from college. We had built everything together, our friendship, businesses, and dreams. But somehow, he had found a place in my home that no friend should ever claim. It began innocently enough. Norman had always been around, stopping by for beers after work, helping with house projects, and filling the space with his natural charm. However, things started to change. His visits became more frequent, and his presence began to feel more intrusive. He was there when I left for work, when I came home, and sometimes even when I woke up, sitting at my kitchen table, chatting with Amanda as if it was his house too. I tried to convince myself I was overthinking it, that I was just imagining things. But then, one night, everything shifted. It was late, well past midnight, and I woke up to the sound of soft laughter coming from downstairs. At first, I thought I was dreaming, but when I heard it again, Amanda's voice, mixed with that familiar, deeper laugh, I knew it was real. A tight feeling grew in my stomach as I sat up, listening. I wanted to ignore it, to roll over and fall back asleep, but an unsettling feeling tugged at me, forcing me out of bed. The house was dark, with only the faint light of Amanda's phone screen illuminating the room as she sat curled up on the couch. She was alone, or at least, that's what I told myself. But as I got closer, she quickly hid her phone, her face shifting from a smile to something harder to read. "Hey," she said, her voice sounding casual. "What are you doing up?" I leaned against the doorway, watching her closely. "I could ask you the same thing." She paused for a moment, just enough for me to notice. "Just couldn't sleep. I was watching something on my phone." I nodded, though a strange feeling settled in my chest. "Who were you talking to?" "No one," she said quickly. "Just a video." I decided to let it go for now. The next day, Norman showed up again. It was a Saturday, and I had planned to go over some expansion plans for the business. But when I pulled into the driveway, I saw his car already parked outside. Inside, I found him standing in the kitchen, laughing with Amanda over coffee. "Hey, man," he said, acting as if nothing was out of the ordinary. "Didn't expect you back so soon." My grip on my keys tightened. "Why wouldn't I be? This is my house," I replied. Amanda gave me a quick glance, her smile fading just a little. "Norman just stopped by to drop off some documents for you." I glanced at the table, but there were no documents in sight. That night, I checked her phone. I had never done it before, never felt the need. But something inside me urged me to. And when I looked, my heart sank. "I miss you already." Norman's name appeared at the top of the screen. I scrolled up, reading through the conversation. It was subtle but intimate, inside jokes, late-night messages, talks about me. They had been texting for months, far longer than I ever imagined. But what hit me hardest was the ease, the comfort between them. This wasn't a fleeting mistake or a casual fling. This was something real. I set the phone down, my hands trembling. I wanted to wake her up, demand answers. But I already knew what she'd say. She would lie. She had been lying for months. Instead, I sat in the dark, staring at the phone. My life, the one I had built, the one I had trusted, was slipping away. And I hadn't even begun to realize just how deep the betrayal went. Sleep never came that night. Every time I closed my eyes, the messages replayed in my head, the stolen glances, Amanda's smile at Norman, the same smile she once gave me. Morning came too quickly, the sunlight creeping in like an unwelcome intruder. Amanda shifted beside me, stretching with a soft sigh, completely unaware of the storm inside me. For the first time in a long while, I really looked at her. How had I missed it before? The emotional distance, how she always kept her phone close, the excuses that never seemed to make sense. She turned to me, her eyes still soft from sleep. "You're awake early," she said. I forced a smile. "Yeah, couldn't sleep." She propped herself up on one elbow, eyeing me for a moment. "Something on your mind?" I almost laughed, but it didn't come out. Instead, I shook my head. "Just work stuff." Her gaze lingered a little longer before she slid out of bed and stretched as she walked to the bathroom. I heard the familiar chime of her phone as she picked it up. "I miss you already." The words hit me again like a punch to the gut. I had a choice to make. Should I confront her now? Demand answers? No, I needed more. I had to know the full truth before I made my next move. At work, my mind was a million miles away from the business plans we were supposed to be discussing. Norman had been my partner from the start, my best friend. We had built this company from the ground up, turning it into something bigger than either of us had imagined. And now, he wasn't just taking my wife, he was taking everything. I wasn't going to let that happen. By lunchtime, I had made up my mind. I was going to uncover the full truth, no matter what. I started small. A few casual calls to mutual friends, asking about Norman's recent business dealings. Nothing too obvious, nothing that would raise suspicions. I also had Isabella, my assistant, pull the latest company reports. If Norman was scheming behind my back, I needed to know. Then, I dug deeper. That night, after Amanda went to bed, I went back to her phone. I had memorized her passcode years ago, back when trust was something I never thought I'd have to question. The messages confirmed what I already feared. But there was more. Dinner tomorrow? My treat. Same place? Norman had sent it just hours before. Amanda replied almost immediately. Of course. Can't wait. I gritted my teeth so hard it hurt. Tomorrow. They had plans, and now, so did I. The restaurant was one of those quiet, upscale spots where people went when they didn't want to be seen. The thought of how many times they'd met there, how many moments they'd shared, laughing, touching, erasing me from their picture, piece by piece, sickened me. I arrived first, parking my car far enough away that they wouldn't notice me. I found a table in the back, hidden in the shadows, and waited. Amanda showed up first, dressed up for the evening, her hair done, makeup perfect, wearing the blue dress I had bought her last Christmas. The one she hadn't worn for me. Norman showed up minutes later, casually dressed, comfortable as if he belonged. He kissed her cheek as he sat down. My fists clenched. I wanted to storm over there, confront them, tear down the facade and expose who they really were. But I didn't. I stayed where I was, watching, listening. Still think we need to be careful. Amanda's voice was low. He's been acting strange lately. Norman smirked. He's not the type to figure it out. I almost laughed out loud at that. You don't know him like I do, Amanda murmured, stirring her wine. He notices things. And if he ever finds out about us, her voice trailed off, but the tension between them was clear. Norman reached across the table and covered her hand with his. That's why we have to move fast. Move fast? For what? I leaned in, trying to hear more, but a waiter passed too close, cutting off their words. When I could hear again, Norman was saying, I can make sure it all goes through. He won't even see it coming. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just about her. This was about the business. My business. They weren't just betraying me and my marriage. They were plotting something bigger. Something that could take everything from me. That was when I knew this wasn't just a betrayal. This was war. I left the restaurant before I did something reckless. My hands were balled into fists as I walked out, my breath coming in short, ragged gasps. Every part of me screamed to turn back, to throw their little dinner date into chaos. But I wasn't ready for that. Not yet. I had to be smarter than them. I sat in my car for a long time, watching through the windshield as they laughed over drinks, as Norman leaned in just a little too close, as Amanda smiled like she didn't have a husband waiting at home. My stomach churned, not just from the affair, but from the other thing, the business. Norman had said, I can make sure it all goes through. He won't even see it coming. What was he planning? And how deep was Amanda involved? I needed answers, and I knew exactly where to start. The next morning, I walked into my office like everything was normal. The staff greeted me as usual, completely unaware of the storm inside me. Norman's office was just down the hall, his door open. He looked up as I leaned against the doorframe, his face unreadable. You're in early, he said casually. I forced a chuckle. Couldn't sleep. Got too much on my mind. He nodded, standing to pour himself a cup of coffee. Yeah, man. Running a business will do that to you. I studied him closely. Was it just me, or was there something smug in his tone? I played it cool. Speaking of the business, I was thinking we should go over some of the upcoming deals. Make sure everything's in order. Norman hesitated for just a moment before recovering. Yeah, sure. Anything in particular? The expansion, I said smoothly. I know you've been handling a lot of the details. Figured I should catch up. His expression didn't change, but I saw how his fingers tightened just a little around his coffee mug. You don't trust me? I laughed. What? No, come on, man. It's just my company too, you know? Gotta stay in the loop. That seemed to ease him. Of course, he said easily. Let's go over everything later this week. I'll put together the reports. I nodded, forcing a grin. Sounds good. Liar. That night, I dug deeper. I'd never really gone through the financials in detail myself. Norman had always handled the financial side of things, and I had trusted him. That turned out to be a huge mistake. As I combed through months of records, patterns started to emerge. Transfers that didn't make sense. Money moving between accounts I didn't recognize. Investments I never approved. It was all there, in black and white. Norman had been siphoning money from the company, little by little, moving it into places I couldn't easily trace. And Amanda, well, I wasn't sure how much she knew. But based on their conversation the night before, it was clear she was involved. Maybe not in the fraud itself, but she knew enough to be worried. And that made her just as much of an enemy in my eyes. My hands gripped the desk as I stared at the numbers, anger bubbling up inside me. They were planning to take everything, my wife, my business, my future. They thought I was blind. They thought I was weak. They had no idea what was coming. The next morning, I made my first move. I walked into the office, calm and composed. I nodded at Isabella, my assistant, as I passed her desk. "Hey," I said casually, stopping for a moment. "I need a favor." She looked up from her computer. "Sure. What's up?" "I need you to pull everything on the expansion project. All contracts, financial reports, meeting notes, anything Norman has signed off on in the past 6 months." She hesitated for a second. "Is something wrong?" I forced a smile. "Just double-checking some numbers. You know how it is." She nodded, though I could see the flicker of curiosity in her eyes. "I'll get that to you by lunch." "Perfect," I said, walking away and exhaling slowly. Step 1, gather information. Step 2, find the weak spot. Step 3, strike. And when I did, I wasn't going to miss. That night, I went home to Amanda, playing the role of the clueless husband. I kissed her cheek, listened to her talk about her day, and pretended I didn't know she had spent her lunch break with Norman at that same damn restaurant. I watched her. Every move, every word, every glance at her phone. She had no idea that I knew. And that was my advantage. Let them keep their secrets. Let them think they were winning. Because soon, I was going to take everything back. And when I was done, they wouldn't even see it coming. The hardest part of any war is patience. I wanted to confront them. I wanted to drag Amanda out of bed in the middle of the night, show her the messages, the bank records, the lies. I wanted to slam Norman against the wall and watch the smirk fade from his face when I told him I knew everything. But that wasn't the way to win. Not yet. I needed them to think they were still in control. I needed them to feel safe. Isabella delivered the documents by noon the next day. "These were harder to pull than I expected," she said, setting a thick folder on my desk. Norman had a lot of them stored separately from the main records. I flipped open the file, my eyes scanning numbers, signatures, and contracts. And buried deep within the paperwork was my confirmation. Norman wasn't just taking money from the business. He was setting up his own company under his name, using our assets. He was planning to completely cut me out. "Thanks, Isabella," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "Is everything okay?" she asked, her voice laced with hesitation. I forced a smile. "Yeah, just a lot of moving parts with the expansion. You know how it is." She nodded, though I could see the skepticism in her eyes. Isabella was sharp, and I knew she'd start putting things together. That didn't worry me. She'd be useful when the time came. For now, though, I had everything I needed. Norman was trying to steal my company. And Amanda? She wasn't just running around behind my back. She was sleeping with the man who was planning to destroy everything I had worked for. I clenched my fists under the desk. No more waiting. That night, I made my first real move. Amanda was in the shower when I grabbed her phone. I already knew the passcode, but instead of going straight to the messages, I checked something else. The calendar. Dinner reservations. A hotel booking for Friday night. I took a slow breath. They were getting bolder. Good. I put her phone back exactly as I had found it, then went to my laptop. I sent an email to a private investigator, a friend from college who owed me a favor. Need a discreet surveillance job. 2 people. Friday night. Details to follow. I hit send and leaned back in my chair. Friday night. That would be the night everything changed. The next day, Norman called me as casual as ever. "Hey, man. Just wanted to check in. You still good for that meeting Friday morning?" I leaned back in my chair, gripping the phone tightly. "Of course. Why wouldn't I be?" He chuckled. "No reason. You just seemed a little distracted lately." I forced a laugh. "Too much on my mind. You know how it is." "Yeah," he said. "I do." There was something smug in his voice. He thought he was winning. I smiled. "See you Friday, Norman." Thursday night, I watched Amanda pack an overnight bag. She didn't even try to hide it. "I might stay at Camille's after dinner tomorrow," she said, slipping a silk dress into the bag. "We haven't had a girls' night in forever." I nodded, pretending to scroll through my phone. "Sounds fun." She hesitated, as though waiting for me to question her. When I didn't, She smiled, and I almost laughed. They really thought I was blind. Friday morning, I met Norman at the office. I played my part, asking about the expansion, nodding along as he fed me his rehearsed lies. Big things are coming, man, he said, clapping me on the shoulder. Just gotta trust the process. I grinned. Oh, I do. We shook hands, and he left, probably thinking I was the biggest fool alive. He had no idea that in less than 12 hours, I was going to burn his entire world to the ground. That night, I followed them. I didn't really need to. I already knew where they were going. But I had to see it. I had to feel it. My investigator was already at the hotel, camera ready. I parked a few blocks away and walked. The air was cool, the city buzzing with weekend energy. My hands were in my pockets, my steps slow and measured. The hotel's rooftop bar was upscale, dimly lit, designed for discretion. I slipped inside, staying in the shadows. And there they were. Amanda and Norman were sitting close together, whispering, laughing. She reached for his hand. He leaned in. I felt nothing. The rage had burned out, replaced by a cold, calculating calm. I checked my phone. The investigator had already sent the first batch of photos. Perfect. I turned and walked away. Tomorrow, everything would change. I didn't sleep that night. Lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, I listened to the silence of the house. Amanda hadn't come home. She hadn't even bothered with an excuse this time. I checked my phone again. The investigator had sent more photos. Clear, undeniable evidence. Amanda and Norman at dinner, their hands touching across the table. Norman guiding her out of the restaurant, his hand resting on her back like he owned her. The two of them entering the hotel, disappearing behind the elevator doors. I stared at the photos for a long time, memorizing every detail. Then I got to work. By morning, the storm was already in motion. Norman thought he was clever, that he had covered his tracks. But he had underestimated me. I spent the day shifting money, locking accounts, cutting off access to key company resources. It had taken weeks to prepare the paperwork, but now everything was set. By the end of the day, Norman would be nothing more than a name on a list of former employees. But I wasn't done yet. The real strike was still to come. At noon, Norman called. Hey, man, he said, sounding tired. Crazy night. Just getting up. I clenched my jaw, forcing my voice to stay light. Yeah, sounds like a good time. He laughed. You know me, always making the most of life. I could hear the smirk in his voice, the arrogance in every word. He thought he'd won. Listen, he continued. I need to talk to you about something. Can we meet later? I let a pause stretch between us, just long enough to make him wonder. Yeah, I said finally. Let's meet at the office. 8 o'clock. Perfect, he replied. See you then. I hung up, exhaling slowly. He had no idea he was walking into an ambush. I arrived at the office early, making sure everything was in place. Isabella was already waiting for me, looking uneasy. I locked down all the financials, she said. Norman's access has been revoked. But, are you sure you want to do this tonight? I met her gaze. I don't have a choice. She hesitated, then nodded. Okay, just be careful. I gave her a small smile. I always am. By the time Norman arrived, I was sitting in my office, sipping whiskey, calm and collected. He strolled in like he owned the place. Hey man, he said, dropping into the chair across from me. So, I've been thinking. I cut him off. I know. He frowned. No, what? I pulled out my phone and slid it across the desk. The screen was lit up with the pictures from last night. Norman's face drained of color. What is this? You tell me, I said, my voice cold. Because it looks like you've been screwing my wife while plotting to steal my company. Norman swallowed hard, but he recovered quickly. This isn't what it looks like, he said smoothly. Look, man, I know this seems bad, but don't. I cut him off again. Don't insult me by lying. I know everything. He exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. Okay. Fine. Yeah, Amanda and we've been seeing each other. Norman's voice was defensive, but I wasn't listening to that. I leaned forward. But listen, man, it's not like, he trailed off, but I interrupted him with a short, humorless laugh. You really think I give a damn about that? Norman blinked, his eyes widening slightly at my response. What I care about, I continued, my voice hardening, is the business. The money you've been funneling. The company you've been setting up behind my back. Now, I saw it, genuine nervousness in his eyes. Look, man, it's not like I was stealing. I slid a document across the desk, interrupting him once again. A termination letter. You're done, Norman. His jaw tightened. You can't just. I can't. I cut him off sharply. And I did. His fists clenched at his sides. You think you can just push me out? I don't think, I said, my voice cold and firm. I know. Norman's face twisted in fury. This isn't over, he growled. I smiled, a small, satisfied curl of my lips. Yes, Norman. It is. By the time Norman stormed out of my office, my phone was already buzzing. Amanda. I let it ring, ignoring the incoming call. Let her wonder. Let her panic. After the fourth missed call, I finally answered. Her voice was shaky, as I had expected. We need to talk. I smiled to myself. Yes, I said quietly. We do. When I arrived home, Amanda was sitting on the couch, her hands clasped together so tightly that her knuckles had turned white. Her eyes flicked nervously toward the door, her body tense as if she might bolt. I stood in the doorway, watching her closely. I crossed my arms and kept my breathing steady. She had called me earlier at work, practically begging me to come home early so we could talk. I knew exactly what that meant. She wanted to get ahead of the storm before it took her down. But it was far too late for that. I said nothing, letting the silence linger. I wanted her to feel the weight of her choices, to watch her squirm. Finally, she broke the silence, exhaling sharply. Norman just called me, she said, her voice tight. What the hell did you do? Her words were controlled, but I could hear the panic rising underneath. I let the silence stretch for a few moments before I spoke. I did what needed to be done. She shot to her feet, her eyes wide with barely restrained fury. You fired him? You destroyed him. I tilted my head slightly, amused. Funny. I thought that's what you two were trying to do to me. Amanda flinched, as if I had struck her. And for the first time since all of this started, I saw real fear in her eyes. She swallowed hard, shaking her head. I don't know what you're talking about. I let out a humorless laugh. You really think you can lie to me now? She took a small, trembling step back. You're being paranoid, she whispered. Norman and I were just friends. Amanda's voice was shaky, but I didn't flinch. I pulled out my phone, tapped the screen, and slid it across the table toward her. Amanda hesitated before looking down at it. The images were crystal clear. Her and Norman at the restaurant, their hands touching across the table. The two of them outside, his hand resting at the small of her back. Then the final nail in the coffin, both of them walking into the hotel together, his arm wrapped around her waist like she was already his. I saw the exact moment it hit her. Her lips parted slightly, and her breathing grew uneven. She reached out, her fingertips barely grazing the phone screen. Say something, I said. Amanda let out a shaky breath. It wasn't supposed to be like this. I clenched my jaw, my patience nearly gone. Oh, I think it was exactly like this. Her hands curled into fists. I was going to tell you. I let out another bitter laugh. Sure you were. Right after you helped Norman take the company. Her eyes snapped up to meet mine, wide with panic. I didn't know about that part. I took a slow step forward. Don't lie to me, Amanda. Tears welled up in her eyes. I swear, she whispered, shaking her head frantically. I never wanted to hurt you. I clenched my fists, forcing myself to stay calm. I wouldn't yell. I wouldn't break things. She wasn't worth that much energy. And yet, I said evenly, here we are. A tear slipped down her cheek. We can fix this. I let the words hang in the air for a long moment, untouched. Then I smiled, but it wasn't a smile of reassurance. No, Amanda, I said quietly. You can't fix this. What she didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that I had already filed for divorce that morning. By the time she fully realized what was happening, the papers would be in her hands. I wasn't interested in a drawn-out fight, hours of shouting, or endless conversations about where things went wrong. I didn't care about her excuses or her justifications. She had made her choice. Now, she would live with it. She could have Norman. She could have whatever pathetic scraps were left of their relationship once the thrill of sneaking around was gone. But she wasn't getting my business. She wasn't getting me. That night, my phone rang. Norman. I almost didn't answer. Almost. But I wanted to hear him squirm. I pressed the phone to my ear, and he was silent for a long moment before he finally spoke. You think you've won? I smirked. I know I have. Norman let out a short, humorless laugh. You're making a mistake. No, I said, my voice calm. I'm not. You made the mistake. You thought I wouldn't see it. You thought I was too stupid to notice. I could hear Norman's breath on the other end of the line. Shallow. Furious. You don't know who you're messing with, Norman hissed. I will come back from this. I leaned back in my chair, letting out a slow exhale. Maybe you will, I admitted. but not with my company, and not with my wife. Norman went silent. I could feel his anger, the weight of his failure crushing him. And for the first time in months, I felt light. "Oh, Norman," I said, my voice almost amused. "It's so over." And then I hung up. By the time Amanda received the divorce papers, I was already gone. I left the house that morning without looking back, without giving her a chance to plead her case. There was nothing left for her to say. Isabella had already arranged everything. My accounts were secure, my business untouchable. Norman and Amanda had nothing. I was free, and they were left with the ruins of the life they had tried to build behind my back. I could only imagine what that felt like. But honestly, I didn't care. I didn't look back. The moment the divorce papers were delivered, I left. No yelling, no fighting, no dramatic confrontations. Just the quiet, calculated end of a life that had already rotted from the inside out. Amanda had made her bed. Now she could lie in it. I moved into a condo downtown, nothing too extravagant but modern and clean, a fresh start. Isabella had handled most of the logistics, ensuring my accounts were locked down and my assets were secure before Amanda could even think about trying to take a piece of them. Norman was already out of the company, and by the time he figured out just how deep I had cut him, there would be nothing left for him to hold on to. I was done playing defense. It was time for them to feel the weight of their choices. The first call came at noon. "Amanda." I let it ring. The second call came an hour later. "Norman." I ignored that one too. By the fifth call, I finally picked up. Amanda's voice was shaking. "We need to talk." I smiled to myself. "About what?" "You know what?" she snapped, desperation slipping through. "You can't just do this." I leaned back against my chair, watching the city skyline through the window. "I think you'll find that I can." She let out a sharp breath. "You didn't even give me a chance to explain." I sighed, rubbing my temple. "Explain what, Amanda? How you spent months lying to my face. How you and Norman planned to steal from me while you were sleeping in my bed." Silence. That's what I thought. She shifted, her voice dropping to something softer. I never wanted it to go this far," she whispered. I let out a short, humorless laugh. "You didn't mind it when you thought you'd get away with it." Pause. Then her voice dropped into something almost pleading. "Do you really want to throw away everything we built?" I closed my eyes, letting the words hang in the air. "We didn't build anything, Amanda." "I did. And you tried to burn it down." Her breath hitched. "I still love you." The words were empty. I knew it. And for the first time, I didn't feel anything when I heard them. "No, Amanda," I said quietly. "You love what I gave you. And now, you don't have it anymore." She said my name, her voice breaking. I hung up. The next few days were eerily quiet. Norman had vanished, no doubt licking his wounds, trying to figure out his next move. Amanda had retreated as well, though I was sure she wasn't done yet. But I wasn't worried. They had already lost. Still, something nagged at me, something unfinished. I had one last thing I needed to do: closure. I wanted to see the look on Norman's face when he realized just how badly he had miscalculated. So I decided to pay him a visit. Norman had always been the kind of guy who landed on his feet, slick, confident, always with a backup plan. But when I showed up at his office, I saw the first cracks forming in his facade. He was sitting at his desk, head in his hands, staring at his computer like he was willing it to change the reality in front of him. When he looked up and saw me, something flickered in his eyes: anger, embarrassment, fear. "You've got some nerve coming here," he said, his voice tight. I took a seat across from him, completely at ease. "I just wanted to see how you were doing." He scoffed. "Go to hell." I chuckled. "Already been there, thanks to you." He stood abruptly, hands clenched at his sides. "You think this is over? You think you can just wipe me out?" I met his gaze evenly. "I know I can." His jaw tightened. "You have no idea who you're messing with." I leaned forward slightly, dropping my voice. "Neither did you." Silence stretched between us, thick with the weight of everything he had lost. Finally, he exhaled sharply and sat back down. "What do you want?" I smirked. "Nothing. Just came to see the damage." His eyes darkened. "You're enjoying this." "Not as much as I thought I would," I admitted. "But watching you scramble? That's a nice bonus." He glared at me. "I'll come back from this." I stood, adjusting my jacket. "I'm sure you'll try." As I turned to leave, I paused at the door, glancing back at him one last time. "Oh, and Norman?" He didn't answer. I smiled. "Give Amanda my regards." Then I walked out, leaving him with nothing but the wreckage of his own betrayal. It was over. Almost. Amanda had tried calling me 7 times since our last conversation. I never answered. The texts came next. Long, desperate messages. Apologies laced with excuses. I didn't read them. I simply archived them, unread, because I knew what they were. Empty words from a woman who had already lost everything. Norman was quieter, but I knew he wasn't done. He was the type to claw and scratch until there was nothing left to hold on to. But that didn't matter. I had already ripped the ground out from under him. All that was left was to make sure neither of them could ever recover from this. I arrived at the office early the next morning. Isabella was waiting for me, looking wary. "He's here," she said simply. I nodded. "Let him in." Norman stormed into my office, his face flushed with anger. His suit was wrinkled, his tie loose, his usual smug confidence replaced with barely contained fury. "You set me up," he growled, slamming his hands onto my desk. I leaned back in my chair, calm. "You set yourself up. You think this is funny?" He gestured wildly. "You think you can just cut me out, and that'll be the end of it?" "I know it is," I said, my voice steady. "Because you don't have a leg to stand on." Norman let out a bitter laugh. "You really think you've won?" I opened the folder in front of me and slid it across the desk. "This is the full audit of your activities over the past 6 months. Fraud, embezzlement, unauthorized transfers. You left a trail, Norman." His face darkened as he scanned the papers. "You wouldn't," he muttered, but I saw the fear creeping in. "I don't need to," I said smoothly. "I'm giving you a choice." His eyes snapped to mine. "What choice?" "You walk away. Quietly. No lawsuits, no claims, no threats." I leaned forward. "Or I turn everything over to the authorities." His jaw clenched so tight I thought he might crack a tooth. "You son of a—" I held up a hand. "I don't think you're in a position to be calling me names, Norman." Silence hung in the air. He was thinking, running through his limited options, realizing just how badly he had miscalculated. Finally, his shoulders slumped. "Fine," he muttered. I smiled. "Good choice." I stood and extended my hand. He glared at it for a moment before shaking it, his grip weak, defeated. As he turned to leave, I spoke again. "Oh, and Norman?" He paused, but didn't look back. "Amanda's all yours." That night, I received one final text from Amanda. "I don't know who you are anymore." I stared at it for a long moment before replying, "Neither do I. But I like him." Then I blocked her number. It was over. Truly, finally over. I walked out onto my balcony, letting the cool night air wash over me. The city stretched out before me, alive, moving, indifferent to everything I had been through. I had lost my wife. I had lost my best friend. But I had kept myself. And maybe, just maybe, that was all I ever really needed. If you enjoyed the story, please like and subscribe to the channel.